Hello viewers, welcome to the 2021 Nigeria Association of Adventist Students Week, tagged SWAG, Save with Amazing Grace. And I have here with me
Ogumoya Bimbola.
Domred Moses is my name.
I'm Chemela Maxwell, the president of this great association. So we are here to do an exposition on the theme. As a matter of fact, today we have a lot of profuse misconceptions about the teaching of grace. And so at this point, we'll be interacting on the theme and we'll get to know what is special about God's amazing grace and how Adventist students here in Babcock University can fit into this special grace. So, Miss Abimbola, could you please tell us what is special about God's amazing grace?
God's amazing grace. What is so special about it is the fact that this grace is given to us by a supernatural being. It's given to us by God. It's given to us by someone that there's nothing we can give him, but he just decided in his bountiful mercies, in his bountiful favor, to actually just give us this grace. That's what's so special about the grace.
Wow, so that means that God's grace is so special and marvelous.
Yes, it is.
All right, Mr. Domret.
Yes, sir.
What is God's amazing grace?
God's amazing grace. Now, the concept of grace, if I should start by way of introduction, has to do with something that we do not merit, something we do not deserve, something we don't work for. Now, let's use the analogy of having to work for something and then being given a free gift by someone. Now, when you are given a free gift, you don't work for it. All you need to do is to receive it. But then when you have to work for something, it becomes by your own works, by your own making. Little wonder the Bible in Ephesians 2:28 says, it's not by our works that we are able to attain this special gift that God has given to us. So God's amazing grace is something that we are not worthy to have. It's not an issue of what or how righteous you're able to live or how spiritual you are, but then God's own way of showing kindness to us out of his own nature of being gracious.
All right. So that means that God's amazing grace is not out of our own work.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
All right. So, Miss Abimbola, what is God's amazing grace still valuable in our own time, especially in this 21st century?
Yes, it is. It is very much valuable. Since, if you remember, one of the names they call God is the fact that he is, he was, he is, and he will be forever. That's the way his grace is. So no matter the time, no matter the season, his grace is always sufficient for us. So even in this 21st century, even with the way the world is going and everything, God's grace is still so much, very much valuable.
Wow, I love that. I love that. So as young people, we still fit into this amazing grace.
Old, young, newborn, anybody fit into the amazing grace.
All right. Mr. Domret,
Yes, sir.
how has this special grace affected the lives of Adventist students here in Babcock University?
Well, now speaking from a personal experience, before I make it a general statement, in our world today, it's quite appalling and unfortunate that we are so overwhelmed by our inability to attain the point of spiritual perfection, not being able to see ourselves as people who could merit God's salvation at the end of the day on the basis of how we live our lives, our shortcomings and our pitfalls. And then a very prominent lie that sells around the world today is that you cannot do anything to, earn salvation. Or in other words, when God extends this grace to you, then it means that you have to work to keep it. Now that's a very big lie the devil sells out to us. And then when it gets to a particular point where I am not able to walk to that expected goal that has been set by maybe persons around me, my friends and colleagues, then I feel that I have fallen out of God's grace. At that point I feel I am no longer worthy to receive God's grace, and then I become depressed, I become frustrated. But then personally for me, I feel that the experience of God's grace goes far beyond what we can do, what we have, given to God as a way of showing appreciation on how we live our lives. Now, coming to Adventist students, God's amazing grace has really been helpful in terms of how we see ourselves. Now, it's not that we are without sin, it's not that we don't fall at one point or the other, but then a full realization of the fact that God is still interested in us, God still desires us, God still shows us kindness, He still shows us mercy on a daily basis. Yeah. To me, I feel has really gone a long way to help Adventist students uphold the message which we so firmly believe in.
All right. Has it in any way affected the academic pursuits of Adventist students here? I mean, God's amazing grace. Is there anything you have to say about it?
How God's amazing grace has affected the educational pursuit of Adventist students. Okay. Now, just like we established and I pointed out earlier, that sometimes it becomes very overwhelming and challenging when you are faced with the reality of the fact that you as an individual are not able to meet up with certain standards in your life. Now, take for example, you have a father who so much loves you, and then you, at one point or the other, break his rules. Do you get? You don't do what he asks you to do. At one point or the other, you do the wrong things at home. Now, you naturally have that feeling of, I have let my dad down. You get? I have done the wrong things. And then you feel that weakness within you. And if, for any reason, your dad does not come back to say, oh, you don't have to worry about this thing, my child. It's not as bad as you think it is. It will weigh you down. And it wouldn't just weigh you down spiritually or mentally, but it also affect other aspects of your life. So if, as Adventist students, we've not been able to come to a firm grasp of the fact that we can fall at every given point of our Christian experience, then when it becomes overwhelming for us, it will definitely affect every aspect of our lives. So God's grace is also extended even in our own educational pursuits, because wisdom, as the Bible says, true wisdom comes from God. So if you really want to be successful, it's also an expression of God's grace upon your life to be able to assimilate properly.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So that means that God's amazing grace has deeply affected the academic pursuits of Babcock students.
Sure.
All right, Ms. Abimbola, what is the world doing, or how can the world cue into this amazing grace? Looking at the pandemic that has ravaged our world, people are shedding tears, young people are at home without attending their educational pursuits. So how can the world cue into this special grace?
For the world to cue into this special grace, first of all, by virtue of you being alive, by virtue of you being created by God, you're automatically under His command to even, like, for Him to actually just give you this grace, this amazing grace. So I feel like you said, that we need to remember that there's nothing we can do for God, for Him to, like, give us this grace or something, because by God waking us up every morning, as far as I believe, that's grace on its own.
Of course.
Because He can decide to just put up the powers and that's it. I'm like, we're dead. So I just feel like the way the world can cue into it is just believing that as far as you're alive, you have this grace. You have this special grace by God. And just keep believing that it's going to keep giving you this grace, this mercy. Because it's even a normal prayer now that, like, when you're praying to God, you're like, God, please bless me, your mercy, your grace, and everything. So just by you being alive, virtue of you being alive, that's on its own a sign that no matter what you do, His grace is always sufficient for you. Even the word said it, that even in your weakness, you are at your weakest point, my grace is always sufficient for you. So that's a sign that as far as you are alive, the grace is always sufficient for you.
All right, that's beautiful. Mr. Domre, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, just one word. Grace is a gift. That gift that has been given to us is no other person but Jesus Christ. So the world must and should have a firm belief in Jesus Christ.
All right, that's beautiful. In addition, are there attitude expected from those who are saved by God's amazing grace? You know, when someone is under grace, some people tend to misbehave because you have the grace. So are there attitude expected from those who are saved by God's special amazing grace?
Yes, you have to live in the newness of life, but then you no longer have to dwell on guilt or any regrets of what you might have done in times past, because I mean, for one, your sins have been covered as a result of the shedding of the blood of Christ. So you no longer have to live in regrets, you no longer have to live in depression, you no longer have to live in sadness, but now you are living in the newness of life. You are adopted as a son and an heir of Christ. So you have no other reason to be sad, but rather to testify of God's goodness to other people.
All right, thank you. You guys have really done very well. To our viewers, we've been able to establish the fact that God's amazing grace is still valuable in our time. And the Nigeria Association of Adventist Students here in Babcock University is really doing her best to help the students here in school fit into God's amazing grace and also help them understand what it really means to have this special grace in our lives. Thank you for watching. God bless you.